Happy Endings by Margaret Atwood. John and Mary meet. What happens next? If you want a happy ending, try A. A. John and Mary fall in love and get married. They both have withdrawn and remunerative jobs, which they find stimulating and challenging. They bought a charming house. Real estate values go up. Eventually, when they can afford live-in help, they have 2 children, to whom they are devoted. The children turn out well. John and Mary have a stimulating and challenging sex life, and worthwhile friends. They go on fun vacation together. They retired. They both have hobbies which they find stimulating and challenging. Eventually, they die. This is the end of the story. B. Mary falls in love with John, but John does not fall in love with Mary. He merely uses her body for self-pleasure and ego gratification of a typical kind. He comes to her apartment twice a week, and she cooks him dinner. You will notice that he doesn't even consider her worth the price of a dinner out. And after he's eating dinner, he fucks her, and after that, he falls asleep. When she does the dishes, so he won't think she's untidy, having all those dirty dishes lying around, and put on fresh lipsticks so she will look good when he wakes up. But when he wakes up, he doesn't even notice. He put on his socks and his shorts and his pants and his shirt and his tie and his shoes. The reverse order from the ones in which he took them off. He doesn't take off Mary's clothes. She takes them off herself. She acts as if she's dying for it every time. Not because she likes sex exactly. She doesn't. But she wants John to think she does. Because if they do often enough, surely he will get used to her. He will come to depend on her, and they will get married. But John goes out the door with hardly so much as a good night. And 3 days later, he turns up at 6 o'clock, and they do the whole thing over again. Mary gets run down. Crying is bad for your face. Everyone knows that, so does Mary. But she cannot stop. People at work notice. Her friends tell her John is a rat, a pig, a dog. He isn't good enough for her. But she can't believe it. Inside John, she thinks, is another John, who is much nicer. This other John will emerge like a butterfly from a cocoon, a jack from a box, and a pit from a plume, if the first John is only squeezed enough. One evening, John complains about the food. He has never complained about her food before. Mary is hurt. Her friends tell her they've seen him in a restaurant with another woman whose name is Madge. It's not even Madge that finally gets to Mary. It is the restaurant. John has never taken Mary to a restaurant. Mary collects all the sleeping pills and aspirin she can find and takes them and a half bottle of sherry. You can see what kind of a woman she is by the fact that it's not even whiskey. She leaves a note for John. She hopes he will discover her and get her to the hospital in time and repent, and then they can get married. But this fails to happen, and she dies. So John married Madge, and everything continued as A. C. John, who is an older man, falls in love with Mary, and Mary, who is only 22, feels sorry for him because he's worried about his hair's falling out. He sleeps with him even though she is not in love with him. She met him at work. She's in love with someone called James, who is 22 also, and not yet ready to settle down. John, on the contrary, settled down long ago. This is what bothering him. John has a steady, respectable job and is getting ahead in his field. But Mary isn't impressed by him. He's impressed by James, who has a motorcycle and fabulous record collection. But James is often away on his motorcycle, being free. Freedom is not the same for girls. So, in the meantime, Mary spends Thursday evenings with John. Thursdays are the only days John can get away. John is married to a woman called Madge, and they have 2 children, a charming house which they bought just before the real estate values went up, and hobbies which they find stimulating and challenging when they have the time. John tells Mary how important she is to him, but of course, he cannot leave his wife because a commitment is a commitment. He goes on about this more than is necessary, and Mary finds it boring. But older men can keep it up longer, so on the whole, she has a fair good time. One day, James breathes in on his motorcycle, which with some top-graded California hybrid, and James and Mary get higher than you'd believe possible, and they climb into bed. Everything becomes very underwater. But along comes John, who has a key to Mary's apartment. He finds them stoned and entwined. He is hardly in any position to be jealous, considering Madge, but nevertheless, he is overcome with despair. Finally, he's middle-aged in 2 years. He would be as bored as an egg, and he can't stand it. He purchases a handgun, saying he needs it for target practice. This is the thin part of the plot, but it can be dealt with later, and shoots the 2 of them and himself. Madge, after a suitable period of mourning, marries an understanding man called Fred, and everything continues as in A, but under different names. D. Fred and Madge have no problem. They get along exceptionally well and are good at working out any little difficulty that may arise. But their charming house is by seashore, and one day a giant tidal wave approaches. Real estate values go down. The rest of the story is about what caused the tidal wave and how they escape from it. They do, those thousands strong. But Fred and Madge are virtuous and grateful and continue as in A. E. Yes, but Fred has a bad heart. The rest of the story is about how kind and understanding they both are until Fred dies. Then Madge devoted herself to charity work until the end of A. If you like, it can be Madge, Cancer, Guilty and Confused, and Bird Watching. F. If you think this is all too bourgeois, make John a revolutionary and Mary a counter-espionage agent, and see how far that gets you. Remember, this is Canada. You will still end up with A, though in between you may get a lustfully burling saga of passionate involvement, a chronicle of our time, sort of. You will have to face it, or the endings are the same, however you slice it. Don't be deluded by any other ending. They are all fake, either deliberately fake with malicious intent to deceive, or just motivated by excessive optimism, if not by downright sentimentality. The only authentic ending is the one provided here. John and Mary die. John and Mary die. John and Mary die. So much of endings. Beginnings are always more fun. True concern, however, are known to favor the stretch in between, since it is the hardest to do anything with. That's about all that can be said for plots, which anyway are just one thing after another. A what and a what and a what. Now try how and why.